do that shit. NightOutHipHop.com.
Yeah. Holy smokes, I'm no joke out the bullpen. Bringing nothing but heat, leave you hanging like clothespins. He's a beast when he goes in, ice cold frozen. The first round draft pick, number one chosen. Drop bombs, explosion, self-promotion. And I keep shit moving like a flanker in motion. I'm the number one spokesman, it's my devotion. That I'm dedicated to the rhyme is my own notion. Brown water's the potion, it put hair on your chest. Or you can put one in the air and it'll put you to rest. Sweet dreams, I'm about to fade. I got my mind on my money and I'm dreaming about getting this all paid. Mr. Go-Getter, Mr. Assertive, Mr. Initiative, Mr. Results, man, I'm all about my business, kid. Damn.
Results and business on a suddenly not so casual Send It Saturday. It is Saturday, January 13th, 2024. NFL Wildcard Weekend. The energy is building as we speak. It is CIRCA Millions, the show, the shark, the gun, the odds fellow, right here live on Sharky Waters Nation. 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. Guns Picks, what's going on, brother?
Man, we are here. NFL Wildcard Weekend. This is not regular season. This is the playoffs. Listen, we killed it in the regular season. We're going to continue the momentum going into the playoffs. And we have the 3 sharpest minds on the planet to give you the information that you need to make the bets that pay the bills. Odds fellow, welcome, my sir. Let's go. What are you feeling this Saturday afternoon?
I'm in the upstairs office because the downstairs is flooded, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to flood you with data. We're going to flood you with information. We're going to flood you with angles. We're going to flood you with leans, and we're going to get some officials. Can't wait for Wildcard Weekend. I personally wish the NFL would be a little less greedy and give us 3 games each day, but we do stretch this from Saturday to Monday, so let's strap in.
Ant doesn't like Monday Night Football, but we're here on Saturday. We're live and ready to dominate. First play, first game, 4:30 p.m. NRG Stadium, Houston, Texas. A rematch of a blowout on Christmas Eve. The Cleveland Browns traveling cross-division to the first career playoff start for C.J. Stroud. Opening up the broadcast, throwing it to the odds fellow, an official on the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, did we really think I was going to get through these playoffs and not just max whale bet the AFC North the entire fucking time? Let's go. Cleveland Browns starting today, -2, -2.5. As long as you're under that 3, I think you're fine. Look, there's a lot of good angles here to the Houston Texans story, but I think it comes to an end today. Obviously some cons of data on both sides of this, which I know Shark has, but we start with the rookie quarterback thing, right? You guys are going to hear a lot about this, and maybe CJ Stroud is built different, but since 2002, quarterbacks making their first NFL playoff start versus QBs who have playoff experience, which is this matchup with Mr. Joe Flacco, are a nice 17-35-1 against the spread. That's 32.7, rounded up to 33% if that's what you want. But you also go back to this matchup previously, right? A few weeks ago, not that long ago, 36-7 was really the score with fewer than 7 minutes to go in that fourth quarter before Houston scored 2 times to kind of tighten it up a little bit more than what they looked like. Now, obviously, what people are going to point to, and the line functionality would tell you this too, CJ Stroud did not play in that game. That was Davis Mills. But does it matter? No, I don't think so, right? Because I think you're going to get an elite number 1 ranked DVO defense stepping up here in this spot. The cons, they didn't look as good on the road. Now, that's also made a little bit worse. Again, that score was 36-7, before Houston really got ticking there a little bit. But I think what you need to do is you need to focus on what the Cleveland offense did in that matchup, right? So even if the defense gets carved up a little bit more by Stroud, I do think they're going to come to play even with some of the injuries in the secondary. You need to get a pass-heavy attack from Cleveland. Flacco averaged 8.8 yards per attempt in that first game. They threw the ball all over the field. Now, do I think Amari Cooper is going to go off the same way? No. But I think you're going to get a complete effort in the Flacco experience here. Don't forget, this guy has 7 road wins in the postseason, right, in his career. So seasoned guy. That offense has been clicking since he got there. The defense is ranked number 1 for a reason statistically. I think analytics here matter, especially in the playoffs as these things tighten up. You get a little loose CJ Stroud. Now, if you don't trust me the full game, you think they're going to get going. There's a lot of stuff that points to Cleveland in the first half, and then maybe Stroud and the Houston team gets a little bit more comfortable. So, again, I'm on it full game. If you don't want to come that route, jump on it for the first half.
jumping off it, and I was not planning on dropping many officials, but I'm going to see if I can talk myself into these plays as we go here. And first game here, I want to discuss. As Anthony mentioned, going back a couple weeks on Christmas Eve, Cleveland did demolish Houston on the road, but I do think that was highly symptomatic to a nice little cocktail of Case Keenum and Davis Mills. And we get CJ Stroud back. And I don't think CJ Stroud is just your average rookie quarterback. This guy is one of the best rookies of all time. And I think more importantly, he's one of the best rookies of all time in the brain. The guy has an old soul and he has the mind of a 100-year-old man. And I'm exaggerating, but maybe I'm not. Because this dude talks like he's a great grandfather. And that is just the maturity you need to win in the playoffs. So you get the revenge element. You get a short line. Now let's talk some data. CJ Stroud this year at home was 5-0 straight up outside of the division. He was also 3-2 ATS outside of the division, but crucial point, 2-0 as an underdog. And you go to the Flacco situation, it's such an interesting conversation. The media has been all over it for weeks. The media loves to sensationalize a great story, but a great story is not the numbers. And what you're really looking at here is fool's gold. Flacco is 4-1 ATS and straight up. He beat the Jags at home. The Jags cratered at the end of the season, were terrible on the road. Trevor Lawrence had 3 different injuries in that game. I'm not impressed. Down 17-7 in the fourth quarter to the Bears. Very fortunate to come back and not cover that and win. As we mentioned, blew out a backup quarterback situation with the Texans and blew out the Jets with Trevor Siemian. That's 3 non-playoff teams and 2 backup quarterbacks. I don't think that's impressive. And I think the media has a grip over the minds of the betting public. And I'm sitting here, I'm talking myself into it. As I said, we're going half units in the playoffs. Let's play it. Houston plus 2.5 at a half unit spot. Guns picks. Any comments?
Yeah, I only got a prop on this one. I mean, I tend to agree with you on the Houston side on this one. What has taken me off of this is just the historical data with rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs. It's a different element. It's a different season. And if CJ Stroud was in the second year, I would say this is Houston all day, and that's just the reason why I'm keeping off of that. I trends are kind of like affecting me on this game. However, I do like a prop on this game. And I think the prop that you taken on this one is Joey Flacco, over on the passing yards on this one. Listen, Joe, he's completely just turned this team into a passing team, right? 323.2 yards per game on average since he took over the starting role for the Cleveland Browns. And you actually look at the 5-game data sample on this one. He put up 254 yards versus the Rams, 21st passing defense, right? Jacksonville, 311 yards passing, 10th passing defense. Chicago, 20th passing defense, put 374 yards on him. And then, of course, he played Houston without CJ Stroud. Take that with a grain of salt on that one. 368 passing yards in that game, 23rd in passing defense. And then, of course, he did it against the 3rd passing defense in the NFL, the New York Football Jets. Put up 309 passing yards against them. So, I think this is going to be a very Flacco type of experience here. I think it's going to be back and forth in this entire game between CJ Stroud and Joey Flacco. I think they're going to be passing the ball a lot. So I'm and especially when you look at the Houston defense, they can stop the run, right? They're ranked 6th in yards per game, 2nd in yards per play as far as rushing defense is concerned. So they know how to stop the run. You're going to have to pass the ball versus this Houston defense. And they're susceptible of giving up passing yards. So I'm going to be taking Joey Flacco over 269.5 passing yards, 1.5 unit special.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with any of that, but I do want to emphasize what I said before about CJ Stroud being such a unique rookie quarterback. I just don't think we can correlate historical stats to this guy. We will see. Final point on this that I do want to mention, I think Houston has a significant coaching advantage. I think D'Amico Ryans is a huge, huge energy. And it's not necessarily scheme, it's energy. This guy was a linebacker for this team going back about 15 years. He's about my age. I definitely fuck with the guy, I'll tell you that. But I can just sense his passion. And I've been sitting here talking about Dan Campbell all year. I think D'Amico Ryans is 1 and 1A, right in that conversation with Dan Campbell. Home playoff game, brutal travel for the Browns. And I don't think Stefanski here, coming out of the Don Zimmer tree with Minnesota, is really that energy guy on the road. Really like this play. Houston plus 2.5. A standoff between the Shark and the Odds fellow. 8:10 p.m., Arrowhead Stadium, icy cold Kansas City. The first official from the gun on the broadcast. Kansas City Chiefs at home. Can they ball? Guns, talk to me.
Yeah, I think this is when you can take the value in the Kansas City Chiefs, the experience in the playoffs, and you're going against a Miami team in the freezing cold. I'm going to be taking Kansas City on this one. I got a -4.5. When you break these teams down DVOA style, the offense is great for Miami. When you look at the defense, they're great against the rush, but they're in the middle of the road against the pass, 15th in yards per game, 18th in yards per play, DVOA 19th in the NFL. When you look at the KC side, actually their defense has been exceptional this year. They're ranked 7th in DVOA. Their offense is taking a step back, but they can still pass the ball. They're ranked 6th in yards per game, but they're ranked 20th in yards per play. So they play a lot of short dink and dunks as far as getting the pass up the field. But when you look at KC, non-divisional opponents, they've done pretty well. +5 point differential, +61 net yard average. And then at home, of course, +7 point differential, +91 net yard average. Everybody says, like, oh, you can't cover at home, but they haven't had any short lines at home. So you have to take that with a grain of salt too. But then you look at Miami on the road. They haven't done well. They're 1-5, especially as a dog on the road. They're 1-5 straight up in ATS this season. But they're -3 point differential, +47 net yard average. So they've been a home team all season long. And then you got KC at home. They're 8-0 to the under, 5-4 straight up in ATS. But a lot of these are divisional games, not the outside the division type of situations for KC. And I think when the media and everybody is saying, Kansas City doesn't have that pep in their step anymore, you're hearing all the interviews, press conferences with Pat Mahomes, and Pat Mahomes is kind of like embracing this, chip on his shoulder, dog type of role. We're going to have to earn it this time. And I like that attitude from him. I think he's a competitor. He's a baller. He's a guy that's won Super Bowls. And quite frankly, this Miami team is, it's a falling knife. They're just not a team that is going to be one of those teams that is going into the playoffs, especially with the injuries. You got Mosfert that's banged up. You have Jalen Waddles listed as questionable as well. I think this is an offense that is struggling to get to the finish line. And, of course, their defense is going to suffer for this one. I think KC in the cold. I also lean towards the over on this one because I just think that the line right now, everybody's saying it's going to be under because it's cold. It's not that the cold is going to get you. It's the wind. And I think I think this is going to be a high scoring event here in Arrowhead. So give me KC though. I'm going to take the side -4.5 for unit play.
Odds fellow, disagreements, official on the road team.
Road. I guess I got to put the shades on to make it official, right? So here we go. Now, look, what Guns laid out is super fair. On paper, that's what I thought too. I thought Kansas City by a country mile, nobody's giving them a chance. But I think the problem here for me, as I got a little bit deeper into it, was just the game script. I frankly think 5 points is too many. I just have it graded differently. I think this is a 1 to 3 point game. KC can still get there. If you were going to do it in exotics, I'd be fine with you putting in KC money line. I personally think the Dolphins can win outright, but I'm playing the +5. When it hit that number 4.5, 5 today, just staying north of that 3 and 4 to me, that was important. So I'll gladly grab the extra points. Again, going back to the game script, I think a lot of this just comes down to that weather factor that we're going to get, right? There's a ton out there. Miami's lost 10 straight games with temperatures below 40 degrees since 2017. They can't play outside. They can't play in the cold weather. 3 of those losses are with McDaniel as a head coach. But the Kansas City defense, although they're a stronger unit and better at home statistically, and Guns laid out, they've kind of carried this team, throughout the year when the offense has struggled and looked a little bit different. They're not as good against the run. They allow 4.5 yards per carry, which is 24th in the NFL, and they were 18th against the run per DVOA. So when you isolate that rushing attack, then you counter it with the Miami rushing attack. Miami should have beat Buffalo last week if they just kept running the fucking ball. They stopped running the ball. They got away from that lead that they were up with. They climbed into this one, right? These guys did play each other. So there's a little bit of a rematch factor here, but that was in a dome in Europe, a different factor. Miami clawed their way back into that. because of some of those KC struggles that happened. So KC got off to that track meet type of start. And then Miami was a Tua fumble away on a final drive from going and winning that thing. So I think the rushing attack, the 1-2 punch between Mostert and A-Chain, were both now healthy. They do have injuries in other places. Miami is more banged up on the defensive side of the ball, but I'm hoping here the cold weather and the game script does lead to a Kansas City offense getting a little bit more stagnant, and Miami being able to control that clock and control the game with the rushing attack and isolating that rushing offense versus the Kansas City rushing defense. So for me, it's game script. There are a few other trends that are interesting on this type of matchup, a 3 versus 6 seed. Underdogs are 20-14, 59% against the spread over the past 20 years, winning 9 of the last 12 of those games dating back to 2017 outright. Wild card road underdogs at +7 or less are 30, 18-1. So it's almost 62. It's 62.5, almost 63% against the spread since 2003. They cover by an average of 1.9 points per game. So we're talking obviously super sharp numbers, right? But some of the trends here on just that, this type of matchup, this type of spread, plus for me, that game script. If you are looking at totals here, I do lean over, like Guns mentioned, but maybe it's a first half over, second half under split. I've seen some people out there in the market already grabbing the second half under if that number is posted. In some markets that's available, because he mentioned it, right? He mentioned the numbers on just, I think this season at home and what that's doing towards the under. A big part of that is because of the way the Kansas City offense looks in the second half over the last 2 seasons. So actually this season in the 17 games, second half unders for Kansas City this season alone, road and home, 15-2 to the under.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the conversation about the total is it's just contrarian versus public. I was watching TV the other day. Every single person is taking the under because of the weather. It's the squarest thing on the planet. I got to be honest with you. So take that for what it is. But talking about the game, I'm not officially on this game. So I think Guns is making a very valid point about there's a very real element to this game where Mahomes could just flip a switch. And, we've talked about this week after week on the show, but this team's, they've been in the playoffs every year, deep, for 4 or 5 years. So they're now taking on that dynasty element to a team where they're just not going to ball in the regular season. And it's crazy to say, but they're just not. They know they're going to get there. They're going to win the division. So why waste our energy? So I think they have a totally other level they could go to here. But I think analytically within the matchup, it does actually point to Miami numerically, as Anthony said. The game played in Frankfurt, which we did have Kansas City in that game to cover. That was an opening line, Kansas City -2.5. This comes home at -2.5 open, which is short. It should bump up to around -4. So this is telling you the game is pretty much what Anthony said, right on the money line. And I think if you look at that game, Kansas City went up in front 21-0 in Frankfurt and then just stopped playing. And Miami did outgain them in that game, 292-267, and was right there. And I think this is very important stuff. Kansas City is 2-3 at home, ATS outside of the division. They're 2-1 at home in the division. So they perform better at home in the division. And if you go to 4 games that were played outside of the division, we're going to throw out a blowout against Chicago. So just let that be, because that contaminates their point differential. 4 other games. Versus Detroit, 21-20 loss. Versus Philly, 21-17 loss. Versus Buffalo, 20-17 loss. And they covered by a point against the Bengals. That was a backup quarterback situation, 25-17. So they haven't been good in this spot. And if you look at Miami's 2-2 road ATS outside of the division if played in the United States. And I think it's spot specific. They did get blown out at Baltimore 56-19, but Baltimore's been hammering out of division opponents all year. Kansas City has not. So I think that's much more on Baltimore than Miami. And I think a specific corollary here, week 1, they were getting 2.5 points at the Chargers in this division. And they did win the game 36-34. And I have it written down here for Miami. It appears to be opponent and geographically specific. If that's the case, because Kansas City does not play particularly well outside of the division at home against the spread, it should be tight. All numbers for me are pointing to Miami. The only thing that's keeping me off is the Mahomes factor. He's Tom Brady. He's Steph Curry. He's Michael Jordan. They have another level in the playoffs, particularly when they've won multiple championships before. So there's a huge narrative point holding me off of this, but the numbers do point to Miami here. So that's the conversation on that game. And we're seeing in the chat the next game we're about to segue to, 1 o'clock Highmark Stadium, is being postponed to Monday afternoon, it appears, Guns.
Yeah, it's breaking news. It's confirmed. I seen the governor put out a tweet on it, and also Ian Rappaport says this game is getting moved over to Monday due to the weather situation going on in Buffalo. So I think the bets have been voided, is what I'm hearing out there. I haven't confirmed that myself, but yeah, this is going to get moved to Monday. So it's a different weather temperament going into this one than we expected going into Sunday. So I would say this is going to be a different type of factor here going into this game. We have to look at the weather situation in Buffalo.
Contaminated. Yeah. It's contaminated.
Absolutely. And I think also this might lean even more to Pittsburgh now.
Yeah.
Because Buffalo is such an urgency-driven team where I kind of felt like they weren't going to find a lot of urgency versus Mason Rudolph anyway. And now they have to delay their motivation, which they've been trying to peak for Sunday for another day. It's a weekday in the afternoon. They never, ever play at this kick time. You know, like, I don't have an official on this game. I had written down Pittsburgh as a lead, but I'll throw it to the gun. Let's talk about the actual analytics of this game. And I do think this new abstract element does make it even more Pittsburgh side, obviously.
Yeah, I have to like step back and look at this a little bit further now that the game has moved a little bit. But the key factor in this one to me is like Pittsburgh heartbeat is never their quarterback, it's never the running back, it's never the wide receiver, it's TJ Watt. TJ Watt's not going to be playing in this game. Every time you see TJ Watt that is listed as out, Pittsburgh is a different team. They're 1-6 straight up, 2-5 ATS. Going back to last year when he was hurt for like 7 games. I was like, this team struggled without him in the lineup. And of course, 4 of those losses were against AFC East teams in 2022. So take that into perspective when you look at this one. They were 0-4, 1-3 ATS versus the AFC East last year without TJ Watt in the lineup. And then you got Pittsburgh on the road, 5-3 straight up in ATS this season, 3-2 ATS as a dog, 6-2 to the under. Then you have they're 5-0 ATS when they're a dog of 3 points or more this season. But they're playing a Buffalo team that loves to play at home. But as a double-digit favorite, it's a little bit tough with them. I know the line is going down to -9 currently. We'll have to look at what the new line is going to be for Monday. But they're 4-5 ATS, 0-4 ATS as a double-digit favorite, winning by an average margin of 4.75 points per game when they're a double-digit favorite. So maybe this is a lean towards the Pittsburgh side. However, TJ Watt out of the lineup makes me very, very nervous about this Pittsburgh team. Not having him in the pass rush, not having him affect plays, not having him create turnovers or tip balls or what have you. It's a detriment to them. And of course, if you actually look at Pittsburgh as a double-digit dog, they haven't done well as in those spots either. So difficult game for me at this point right now. I'm leaning towards the Buffalo side, but maybe I'll reassess, look at the numbers one more time now that the game is moved to Monday.
Yeah, let me just jump off, and then we're going to throw Anthony the total here. When I started to look at this last night, I was looking at Buffalo, again, psychologically, because this team, more than any team in the sport, is all in the mind. And it's about the urgency of the opponent. Can they take this opponent seriously? And if you look at their ATS flow within this calendar year, it's fairly uncanny, actually. 3-1 ATS to start. Again, psychologically, come out of training camp, pretty juiced up in September. It's warm in Buffalo. Then they go 0-6 ATS next 6. A lot of lackluster opponents. Played the Giants with a backup quarterback, the Bucks, Denver, New England. Didn't cover any of those games. Then once they found some desperation, they were going to miss the playoffs. They finished 5-2 ATS. So that brings you to round 1. Theoretically, you would have motivation. You're in the playoffs. But guys, this is the Bills. This is round 1. This is a backup quarterback. This falls right back into the trap environment for them. And you look at Pittsburgh with Mason Rudolph, he's been pretty impressive. I mean, I can't lie. Blow a divisional win against Cincinnati, 34-11. Goes on the road to a scrappy Seattle team, wins outright as a dog, 30-23, and then comes back last week in the division, albeit with a backup quarterback, but still gets the win 17-10. So it's been impressive. And you go to the Bills within the playoffs, and this is where, again, this urgency psychological thing keeps ringing more true. Go back to last year in the first round. They faced a backup quarterback at home. It was Skylar Thompson from the Dolphins, and they couldn't take the game seriously. They were laying 13.5 points. They went out in front like 21-3 and then stopped playing ball. The game got tight, and they won 34-31. And go back to 2021, the only other time that the Bills were laying a touchdown roughly to a sketchy quarterback situation, they played Indianapolis with Phillip Rivers in the back end of his career. It was January 9th, 2021, first round, Orchard Park. Same thing. Get an early lead, let down, -6.5, win the game 27-24. It's crazy to say. It's sick psychology. This team just cannot take the moment seriously unless they are presented with a championship game, a desperation game, or a Hall of Fame quarterback looking them straight in the face. I honestly think Pittsburgh probably keeps this tight, and I think the fact that it's now being played on Monday afternoon makes it even more a BS, dog, scrappy game. Anthony, with the under, I think confirming all that as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was going to get there on the under. Now that thing is completely contaminated. It was sitting at 33.5 most of the day. I think it opened closer to 43. So a lot of that was the weather factor. And I was looking at weather and game script. I mean, you have two decent defenses here. I think 6th ranked Pittsburgh DVOA-wise, and then Buffalo sits there at 12. And Buffalo's had their problems converting throughout the year. Obviously, that 5-2 stretch was a little bit better, but they looked really sloppy offensively. Scoring points against most of the teams, even during that stretch, right? Obviously, the most impressive game was the Cowboys, and I just don't know what type of motivation there was there for the Cowboys who got smacked around in that game. They just found out they clinched the playoffs. They couldn't get anything going offensive early, and Buffalo got out to kind of a track meet win and never really looked back. You go to those games against New England and some of the other games during that run, and Buffalo lets these teams hang in it, right? They let it stay tight, especially against good defenses like that New England defense. I think that's a little bit of a comparable game there. So look, hopefully my bet does get voided. I do want to see where this resets with the weather conditions being a little bit better, because 33 is an easy line to get over, obviously. I was getting closer to Pittsburgh and the points, especially at +9.5, +10. I think it's still good at +9 if that's where this thing opens up. So a little bit of a lean there for me for Pittsburgh. And I'm hoping on the total, because I do think you're still going to get a sloppy game, right? The defenses that I mentioned, the red zone problems that I mentioned, the turnovers. Josh Allen is a turnover-prone quarterback. The narrative last year about Dak Prescott was all over the news, and nobody talks about it this year with Josh Allen, but now that's been a recurring thing for him. So I do trust Josh Allen. I think he's a stud. He leads that team. Obviously, he's dangerous in the rushing attack, but turnovers, create different fields. They take points off the board. They've been a little bit better in the red zone from a turnover standpoint, so maybe that factors into it. But if this thing opens back up around, that 41, 42, 43 range for me, I'm going to be under as well.
Yeah, our guy Money Channel says the new line has opened up at 38.5. It makes sense. They're expecting less defensive focus. Potentially the crowd won't be as live in the middle of the afternoon on Monday as well. And that's another point. The home field advantage is different on a weekday. I mean,
it is a holiday, though. It is a holiday, so a lot of people have that day off. So let's take that with a grain of
salt. MLK Day, right?
Yeah. That's a very good point. And, of course, it is the Buffalo crowd. They'll be up there at 5 a.m. drinking in the parking lot. So it'll be super, super live. And speaking of being super live, my top play of the week, 4:30 p.m., AT&T Stadium, Sunday afternoon. Sundays are for the Sharps. Taking the Dallas Cowboys -7, 1-unit official. Now let's really go to the details here. I got fired up handicapping this. I love this side. It's the top play of the week. Dallas is 8-0 straight up at home, and they are 6-2 ATS. An absolute juggernaut, margin everywhere. They also are a nice little buy low here in this spot. 0-2 ATS, last two at home. Non-cover in primetime against Seattle, real tight one by 6. And a game against Detroit. Detroit did get the final touchdown of the game to not cover. Dallas could have covered that one. But you go back to line corollaries for this spot, laying 7 points in that range. You got to go back earlier this year. They did lay 8 points to the Jets and win 30-10. They did lay 6 points to the Patriots and win 38-3. And they did lay 7.5 points right on this number to the Rams, 43-20 blowout. Go to the Green Bay side of this game. I think Green Bay is the ultimate level of fool's gold. And I think even more specifically, they have amazing polarization in their road tendencies. Green Bay is straight up excellent on the road in the division. 3-0 straight up, 3-0 ATS. Week 1, blowout at Chicago, 38-20. Thanksgiving Day, huge win outright at Detroit, 29-22. And at Minnesota, 33-10. 3-0 plus 48-point differential in the division. Go outside of the division, they're 1-5 straight up, 2-4 ATS. And listen to who they played. At Atlanta, took a 1-point loss. At Las Vegas, 4-point loss. At Denver, 2-point loss. At Pittsburgh, 4-point loss. At the Giants, 2-point loss. At Carolina, 3-point win. 1 win against Carolina, and they barely won. That is 5 non-playoff teams and all mediocre first-year or backup poor quarterbacks. Their road sample outside of the division is the softest thing you will see since I don't even have a reference for it. And if you look at those covers, they only had 2. They were both by a hook. They were getting plus 1.5 at Atlanta, and they lost by 1, and they were getting plus 2.5 at Denver and lost by 2. They could have literally gone 0-6 straight up and 0-6 ATS against all bottom feeder caliber teams outside the division. And not only that, Green Bay is coming off of a home cover. Green Bay is 0-4 ATS on the road outside of the division, coming off of a home game. Both of their covers were actually the second game in a road sequence. So for whatever reason, when they're on the road and they stay on the road, they uptick their quality. When they come off a home game going on the road, they don't have it. And I have this written down and I'm fired up. And I wrote this last night. I said, so Green Bay does this all year. And people still think they're a sexy dog on the road at Dallas? Are you kidding me? And you look at Green Bay, I think the Green Bay bias is real. People love the jerseys. They love Aaron Rodgers. They love the green, the big G on the helmet. People don't like Dallas. The media doesn't like Dallas. People listen to the media. And the sexy dog pick in the first round is something a lot of people like to tell their friends about. There's a lot of bias in this game. There's not a lot of intelligence and data. Turn the hell up, Dallas. Hammer these fools on a suddenly not so casual 7-point Sunday. Guns picks. I'm fired up. You got the first half. Talk to me.
Yeah, I think this is going to start out fast, and this is what Dallas does in these situations. If you're taking a Dallas side in the game, you're going to expect them to go out dashing in the first half. But a lot of good points there made by the Shark. But I look at this as what has Green Bay done in the last 9 games? They've been red hot, right? 9-3 straight up run. But look at the defenses they face, and they've done it in the passing game, right? They put up 283 yards versus Pittsburgh. That team is ranked 17th in opponent yards per game given up in the pass. You got the Chargers 30th against the pass. They put up 295. Detroit 268. They're 27th against the pass. They did put up 253 versus Kansas City. They're 4th against the pass. That's probably the outlier in that one. Then they played the Giants. Giants are 19th against the pass. They only put up 203. 261 versus Tampa, 29th against the pass. And then they're going to only put up 207 versus Carolina. Granted, Carolina can't score points. They're 3rd against the pass. Then you got Minnesota, 293 against Minnesota, 24th against the pass. Chicago, 25th against the pass. They put up 308. So they're playing these bad passing teams. And you look at the Dallas side, they're 5th they're 5th in the league against the pass in yards per game, 9th against the pass in yards per play, 7th in defense passing DVOA. So this is a better defense, a step up in class for this Green Bay Packer team. Then when you look at this step up in class, they only averaged 22.5 points per game versus playoff teams this season, which is 3-3 straight up. And most of that was due to the fact that they had this great game versus Kansas City. So take that with a grain of salt on that one. But they haven't scored more than 22.5 points per game versus any playoff team this season. And then you got to look at Green Bay as a dog, 5-5, 6-4 ATS, a 4-1 to the over. So you have a lot of these stats that are telling you over. But when you actually look at these two teams in Dallas and Green Bay, They only average 20 points per game overall versus playoff teams. So I think this is going to be a little bit more of a rock fight. However, Dallas at home is a different animal. They play exceptionally well at home. And then you check, they're 8-0 straight up, 6-2 ATS at home this season, 12-1 straight up, 10-3 ATS as a favorite, 6-2 ATS as a favorite of 7 points or more. So you have this Dallas team that is just going to be hammering this Green Bay team. They're better. They're more of a fade on the road than they are at home. And then you got to look at the total in this one. It's over 50 points, right? So when you look at the totals of this season, when they've actually had them, this is the highest total that Green Bay has seen all season. They did hit the over 47 earlier in the year. But when you look at the Dallas side, this is the third highest total they've seen all season. And when the total is above 50 points, they're 4-0 to the under. So I think this is an overinflated line between these two teams. I don't think both teams are going to be revved up scoring points on this one, but I think Dallas's defense is going to take over this Green Bay team, especially early in the game. And and the line is correlated to a good first half for Dallas. The line was at 7. You're seeing -4 out there in the first half. That's nearly 60% of the spread covering in the first half. So I'm going to be taking Dallas -4 first half, 2-unit play, and the under 51.5 3-unit play.
Speaking of unders, 8:15, Ford Field, Detroit, Michigan. Really interesting stuff here tomorrow night. Rams returning Matthew Stafford to where he brought the Detroit Lions up in their quality for close to a decade. And he put out a great video earlier this week. I watched it. I didn't watch all of it, but I did watch some of it. It was very sentimental. It was very connected. I think he's a great guy off the field. He has a great soul and heart in his body. So I respect Matthew quite a bit. I think this game is very difficult to handicap. I think both teams are coming into this game both equally hot in the environment. The gun likes the under. Let's open the conversation there.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is another correlate. Like any playoff games that get over 50 points, I get hungry for the under on this one, and it's just in my DNA, I guess. But you got to look at Detroit. Detroit, I mean, exceptionally well on the offensive side, right? But you have to understand the situation for them. They haven't won a playoff game since 1992. All right, so it's still stuck in their head. The media is pumping it in there. There's going to be some nerves going into this game, so I expect maybe some flatness early on in this one. But when you look at the offense, they're ranked 11th in yards per game, 12th in yards per play in the rush. Passing, they're ranked 10th in yards per game, 9th in yards per play. That is the Rams side. But when you look at the Detroit side, they're fifth against the rush, second in passing yards per game, and 5th in yards per play. So you would think, oh yeah, this is going to be well over on this. However, the situation for the number, you have to look at the number here, right? The total is at 51.5, 52. So Detroit has faced this 2 times when the total is over 50 points. They hit the under in both of those situations. Then you got to look at the Rams. When the total is above 46 for the Rams, 4-0 to the under this season, okay? So you have 2 situations where you're looking at the number correlation in these situations, and both teams affected leaned towards the under in all these situations. Then you got to look at Detroit, 3-0 to the under when they're a 3-point favorite this season as well. So the number, the spread is correlated with the total. And then you got to look at the pace of play. Granted, both teams are on the upper side of the pace of play, but I think when you're looking at a playoff situation with Matt Stafford, Jared Goff, there's a lot of drama, narrative into that game. There could be a situation where you're looking at these 2 guys thinking they're going to just go back and forth scoring touchdowns. I don't think so. I think this is going to be more of a low scoring affair here with these 2 teams, especially when you look at the total. When they face a total of over 50 in these spots. So give me the under 52 3-unit play.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think this game is just incredibly difficult. Anthony, you got any comments on this one?
No, I would just lean under as well. I think similar to what we said about KC and probably what I would say about the Dallas game as well. You kind of have that square look to just, going a certain way with the total based on what you're hearing and seeing. So you're going to see 2 red hot offenses. I was on the Rams a lot in the back end as they were getting healthy. We talked about that world where they finally had QB1, running back 1, and wide receiver 1. But I think it's a different environment in the playoffs. You got to take into account how well these teams know each other. And the game I would probably most correlate it to, at least on the Lions side, is probably like that Lions-Cowboys game. That total was anywhere between like 48 and 52 as well, and it stayed way under. Granted, that was a primetime game, and it was tight for other reasons. Maybe gets there if, we get into overtime. But the game went under, right? And this total sitting there at that number, I would lean under. I want to get there on the Rams. I worry, Ziggy mentioned Green Bay will be a public dog this week. I think another big public dog is the Rams or the Rams money line, especially the Rams at +3. A lot of that narrative of, McVay being able to know how to take away Goff. It's tough for me because I think psychologically speaking, this might be the time Detroit has to break through, right? Break that drought at home, win this game. If this game was in LA, maybe I feel differently about it. So I'm not there on anything official. I would lean right now Rams, and I would lean the under. Agreed with Guns.
Yeah, this is the toughest game by far, in my opinion, and for numerous reasons. I'll go through it briefly here. So the Rams come into this game scorching hot. After their bye week and after Stafford came back from an injury, this team is 7-1 straight up and 7-1 ATS last 8. So you ask yourself a question. Is this just the plane of upward movement that they're riding on, or are they way too hot? And I think this is a breaking point. I really do, because it's basically half a season. When you go 7-1 for basically half a season, that's the reversal point. You either define yourself as being elite or you come back to the normal. And I think when you start to go through their out-of-division games, they were 2-4 ATS road outside the division. But I think, again, that's a contaminated step because their non-covers, 2 of them, Matthew Stafford got hurt at Dallas. Then he didn't play at Green Bay. So toss those out. Dallas was already blowing them out. But that's also why we're taking Dallas this week. So whatever. But the first one this year at Cincinnati, and I think this is a reasonable corollary, and I think it speaks to Guns' under as well. 1916 Cincinnati, -3. There's your line for this week, -3. The only time this year they were getting 3 points on the road, they pushed. And they've been effective, and Detroit's been effective at home outside of the division as well. 4-1 ATS. Only non-cover came against Seattle. You could say, okay, so they don't play well against the NFC West. I don't know if it's that because Seattle also got them last year in Detroit. I think that's more on Seattle, schematically, motivationally, whatever you want to call it. And I have written down here, who's too hot? I don't know. I think this is probably a push line. I think Detroit probably wins this game. As Anthony mentioned, it's been 3 decades almost since they won a playoff game. Their time is now. The coach is right. The arc is correct. But I think it could be a push. So I think money line, Lions, we hate to say it, but you might not be able to cover this spread because I think it might push. So tough game. Moving on. Monday Night Football, Raymond James Stadium, January 15th, closing out the wild card round. Bird Gang on the road, 11-6 at the backdoor Bucks. Come hard late season and win the NFC South, 9-8 on the campaign. A lot going on in this game. I have commentary, but the gun has an official.
Yeah, I think Tampa wins this game outright. I mean, I can't get past it. When I look at these numbers, I keep saying this about the Eagles, and I said it last week, and I was correct again. The Eagles are a falling knife. So stop.
Did you say the Vikings or the Eagles?
I said the Eagles. The
Last year's
EAGLES Eagles. False narrative, hangover city with this Phillies team. When you look at the regression, let's look at the passing game, okay? Because that if you're gonna win this game versus Tampa, you're gonna win it in the passing game because they're exceptional against the rush. They can stop the run better than anybody. Like I said, with Tampa, they're 29th in opponent yards per game given up and 25th in opponent yards per play. However, when you look at Tampa, regression in the passing game. Last 5 games versus Dallas, 218 passing yards, 7th in passing DVOA. Seattle, 142 passing yards in that game, 28th in passing DVOA. Giants, they put up 295. Congratulations to you. 13th in passing DVOA. Arizona, 184 passing yards in that game, 31st in passing DVOA, and 166 versus the Giants last week, 13th in passing DVOA. Then you got to look at underdogs in Wildcard Weekend. 8 out of the last 11, they have covered the spread and virtually won outright in most of these spots. But you look at Tampa, they're just red hot. Overall, they have a plus 6 point differential, plus 21 net yard average. They've won 5 out of the last 6 games. And then you have the exact polar opposite versus Philly. minus 10 point differential, minus 48 net yard average in their last 6 games, lost 5 out of 6. So this is a team that is just regressing in the hangover role, not early in the season, but late in the season. Plus, you got the revenge factor for Tampa, right? They had their worst loss of the season versus Philly in week 3, 25-11. They put up minus 298 net yards in that game, and it was their worst offensive performance of the season, only putting up 174 yards of total offense in that spot. So that is stuck in their craw as well. Plus, you got to look at Philly as a favorite. They're 6-8 ATS overall, 1-8 ATS when they're a favorite of 5 points or more. Granted, this is a lower line on this one. But I just feel like this is a Tampa spot. They're playing at home. They're going to be revved up. It is prime time. Baker Mayfield is going to be able to dissect that Philly defense that is just a Swiss cheese mess right now. They're talking about firing their coach after winning a Super Bowl last year. There is problems in that organization altogether, and I think Tampa can take advantage of it. So give me Tampa +3, 2-unit special, and 1 unit on the money line +135. Let's go Bucs, baby.
Yeah, just to clarify, they did not win the Super Bowl last year. They were close, though.
I said, I mean, runner-up. Excuse me. They were in the Super Bowl.
I had the Birds in that game. They were up huge in the first half, and I was like, oh, my God, come on, guys. Hold on to the trophy, bro. But speaking of holding on to something, holding on to your season here, I was looking at this last night. Gunn said it, falling knife, 10-1 straight up to start, 6-3-2 ATS. All of a sudden, last 6, 1-5 straight up, 0-6 ATS. And I have written down here, this isn't a bounce back. This would have to be a reincarnation because this team is dead. And you start to look at this 0-6 ATS sample, the first 3 actually make sense. The team was too hot. They were 10-1. Then they had to play KC, Buffalo, Niners, Dallas, and Seattle back-to-back. We had been talking about this in the lead up to that sample. They were going to get crushed. So it made sense. Fine. You get blown out by the Niners. You lose at Dallas in the division. You got to stay on the road after Dallas to go to Seattle. Fine. Whatever. You were supposed to do that. However, the last 3 games are eye-opening. Barely covered against the Giants on Christmas Day. Outright home loss to Arizona. And then last week, a loss at the Giants. This team is in free fall. The media is all over it. I don't think that's going to affect them. I will say that. I think Jalen Hurts is a very centered individual. I think Nick Sirianni is very, very centered as a head coach. I like both of them in the mind. But I think Jalen Hurts is actually injured significantly. And I think holding on to the ball is going to be very difficult for him here. My problem with taking Tampa Bay is 5-1 ATS last 6. They're playing garbage teams. As we mentioned, this division is very, very soft. Carolina twice, New Orleans, Atlanta, Green Bay, and Jacksonville. That sample, which got them to the playoffs. That is a non-playoff team, a non-playoff team, a non-playoff team, a non-playoff team, another non-playoff team, and Green Bay. If Philadelphia can somehow pull something out of their ass and turn up here, I would be impressed. But Philadelphia is a far better team if uninjured, focused, and ready. I just think they're a lost group. I think they're hurt. I think they're in shackles. And the line is suggesting it. As Guns mentioned, Monday Night Football, Week 3, September 25th. Philadelphia 25-11. Philadelphia was -5.5 in that game. If that game was supposed to repeat itself, it would still be -5.5 or higher. This opened up at -2.5. Books are telling you Tampa Bay wins this game. The book line is a Tampa Bay side, and the Gun officially on the spread and the money line.
Also consider this one more injury report on this one, and I just saw it on ESPN. A.J. Brown ruled out for this game, the number 1 target on the wide receiver end. So this team, to me, doesn't even care to finish the season and try to go back to the Super Bowl. I think this is a Philly team that is unmotivated, in my opinion. But go ahead, Odds.
No, for me, I think the schedule and there was probably a world where a lot of people would look at and easily fade whoever came out of that NFC South because it was a garbage division, right? And it was a 3-team race. I think they all finished around that 8 and 9 mark. Could have got in besides the Panthers, who were in tank mode. It's always interesting when these bad division winners get a home game, though. You take that for granted too, right? Obviously, this is a home underdog. We've seen garbage teams that they used to finish 7 and 9 or 8 and 8, and they win that home playoff game because it's such a boost to them from a record standpoint. So for me, the side is tough. I'd be hard pressed to not think Philly looks at this as a rallying point, some of the DNA and some of the close games that they've built up. But the other side of that is the continued regression and the continued free fall from where they were just, sustaining that they were running entirely too hot. For me, the best look in this game is actually the over, and that's where I lean. That's really, again, because of the game script and because of where that defense for Philadelphia especially has looked, especially since week 9, right? Going into some of that gauntlet, obviously. So some of this is scheduling, but then just the free fall that's come with it. Their defense is 31st in the league in EPA per play. So they're giving up, chunks on and can't get stops. I think they're pretty bad on third down. And then from again, to lean towards that over, right? Tampa, from a rushing standpoint, is not very good. And the Philadelphia rushing defense is very good, actually, statistically, despite the defensive shortcomings and the defensive regression that we've seen from them. So what you're going to get is a Baker Mayfield-led passing attack. So maybe that does lead to points. I think the A.J. Brown injury obviously hurts a little bit, might affect that. But for me, I lean over.
Yeah, that's a great point. I actually wanted to mention that. I didn't. In the game played on September 25th, Philadelphia controlled the run game more than anything. 201 rushing yards to only 41 for Tampa Bay. So that entire game was won on the ground. So A.J. Brown being out might not be as big of a deal as people think. The only reason it would be a big deal is because the offense would become unbalanced and Tampa Bay could just stack the line expecting the run. But Philadelphia is going to be running the ball this game. I think if you want to look at props, look at running props for the Eagles. Really? And great point, Anthony. We love to see it. That's the broadcast. Wildcard Weekend 23-24, Saturday, January 13th, 2024. CIRCA Millions, the show. The Shark, the Gun, the Odds Fellow. My top play by a mile. Dallas -7. Playing Houston this afternoon at +2.5. I do lean towards Miami to keep it close. The other games are a toss for me. The Gun with a big-time 3-unit spot on Kansas City tonight at Arrowhead. Dallas first half -4. Under Dallas 51.5. Under Rams 52. Monday Night Football +3. The home team, the Bucs, and the money line. Odds fellow, Cleveland -2.5. Pittsburgh, Buffalo under. That's a new total. He will redefine that on Monday. And Miami +5. We appreciate you guys immensely. Have a beautiful Saturday, Sunday, and Monday holiday weekend. Stay safe. I shouldn't have to say that. You guys know what to do. Fucking dominate. Guns, close them out with some words, and let's go.
Yeah, I see all you beautiful bastards watching us live. You watch us later. We'll watch us at any time to get the sharpest information on the planet. Please hit the like. Please hit the subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you know every time that we go live. This is the CIRCA Million Show. Support us, and I appreciate everybody in the chat. Ziggy Balls, Jabaka, Niner, Bang Bang, Niner Gang, Money Channel, Bob, the Candyman, always in the building, always in the chat, the Money Channel, and S. Dot, and all you beautiful bastards out there that have just joined us and interacted. Of course, Lockbet's joining us as well. So basically, want to say this to everybody. Let's have ourselves a dominating weekend. Let's kill it. Let's cash some tickets. And as always, let's keep dancing.